Welcome to this edition of UpFront, a monthly program produced by New Hanover County Schools. I'm Ann David. Each month here on UpFront, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Tim Markley, answers direct questions from you, the public, about district-wide issues, accomplishments, and programs. Welcome, Dr. Markley.
Ann, it's good to be back.
We are covering a lot today, and I know that our guests usually are used to a special guest coming, but you're with us all day to talk about legislative issues and some budget issues, which are all in the news right now.
Well, it's coming up on the end of the year, and we are in what's called the long session of the legislature. So that means that this is the time for a lot of major legislation, a lot of changes. We'll talk about those today. We'll talk about some legislation that's already been happened and what's happening with those.
True. The first thing that we're going to cover is what is known as, I guess, the READY initiative, which comes off of the Race to the Top funds, and I'm sure all our parents are familiar with the Race to the Top. They've heard that.
Yeah, it encompasses a couple of things. We're in the process of a major curriculum overhaul, and we've talked about that here before, Common Core. And to help implement Common Core, the state applied for a federal Race to the Top grant and received that grant. So as part of that grant, we've had to revamp some of our testing pieces. EOCs, EOGs, they're still there. They will be new EOCs and EOGs aligned to the new Common Core standards. And the Common Core standards are not a federal standard, but it's a group of governors who got together and wanted to have a more unified kind of approach. As part of this, also that Race to the Top grant was this idea that they wanted to be able to tie data to student performance to teacher performance. So they instituted a new series of exams that were originally called MSLs and are now more commonly known as common exams.
Yes, I know our high school students got a notice home, probably just into the second semester, about the common exams. What topics are covered for those?
Yeah. They want to have a data point on every teacher. So if a student takes an EOG or an EOC, or a teacher gives an EOG or an EOC, that serves as that teacher's data point for evaluation. But for some teachers, there's not an EOC or EOG that's matched up to that. So they'll give what's this common exam. And the common exam is created by the state to measure the curriculum standards for that particular subject. Social studies would be a prime example. So the students will take that test and they'll get a grade because it's as a measure of what they've learned in the class, just like they would with an EOG or an EOC, with an EOG. And then the teacher, the collected data becomes part of that teacher's evaluation process. So after 3 years, we'll have a set of data that we can see if the teacher's meeting those standards. To be honest, I have some concerns about those common exams. Traditionally, we will vet exams prior to giving them. This year, the state's reversing that process somewhat, in that they're going to give the exams, and then they're going to do the validation piece after the exams. So we're going to have to look at those results carefully and make sure that they don't have a negative impact on either teachers or students, and if they do, we'll make those adjustments as needed.
I know most parents are used to the field tests
Yes.
of questions that are added to EOGs, and the kids are told that, and EOCs as well. So this will be the first time the common exams are given.
Correct.
Okay, and for EOCs, just to let parents know, what are the subjects that still have EOC exams?
All right, EOC, end of course, is still given in grades 3 through 8 for reading and math, and then in 5th and 8th grade for science. EOGs, end of grade, are the high school exams, and there are 3 of those. It used to be English 1, it's now moved to English 2. There's been a writing piece added to that wasn't in the original English 1. Algebra 1, biology are the 3. High school students also in 11th grade will take the ACT, which is the National College Placement Exam. So for high school students, those are the 4 primary tests that they'll take.
I know there's been an increase in, I guess, the PSAT and the ACT. Mm-hmm. Originally, those weren't given as often.
Correct.
Are they funded by the county?
The ACT and what's known as the plan test, which is the pre-ACT, are funded from the state. And what it does is that's a test that's given nationwide. So it gives us an opportunity to be able to compare what we're doing in North Carolina with other states. And last year was the first year they did that. And we had, comparably, had some very good results in terms of where we placed with ACT. We were 22nd in the nation on our ACT scores. As a district, we were above the state average almost in every category. So it's good to be able to benchmark what we're doing with other places. And that ACT also serves as a college entrance exam. So any of our students who are interested in college can use that exam score to help them with entrance.
True. I guess the ACT is almost equivalent to the SAT now,
Yeah,
as far as what colleges look at.
Most colleges will accept either or.
Well, that's good. So our students are being more prepared for college entrance.
Yes.
That's great. Now with the common exams, I know here we have the exam exemption with the attendance policy. How is that going to work?
The common exams treated just like EOGs or EOS in the course kind of test. They will not, if you're required to take an MSL, then you can't be exempted from that. So there are still some courses which are teacher-made tests that the exam exemption policy would apply to, but anytime that you're required to take a test, MSL or a state test, then you got to come in and take the test.
Okay, if parents didn't receive that letter from their high schools, where can they find a list of those classes so they know, which of the courses their children are taking will have a common exam?
As always, the first place to go is go to your school, talk to your assistant principal or guidance counselor, and they should be able to tell you what exams that your student will have to take.
Okay, that's good to know. The next thing that I've had questions about is that the Parent Assist module that parents have become so attached to keep up with their children has been closed down, I guess, in lieu of a new program that's following the Ready initiative. Could you kind of go over what's happening with that transition?
The Parent Assist module, which we fought for years to get added into the NCY system, was added in last year, and it's been a great success. Now, the NCYs is no longer being supported by the state. The state is moving to a new system called PowerSchool, which is basically a similar system. But we're in the middle of transitioning out of NCYs and into PowerSchool. So as part of this transition, we've got to shut down components of the old NCY system and roll them into PowerSchool. Example, your high school kids may be filling out their schedules earlier this year for next year than they have in the past because we've got to have those schedules in place so they can do the conversion. We apologize for the temporary inconvenience, but once PowerSchool is up and running, the Parent Assist module will be back. And the preliminary things that I've seen about that program is it'll actually be a little more feature-rich for parents than the current NCY system is.
Will it have similar login procedures as?
It'll have a password and login to access it. You'll see your student's grade. One of the things you'll be able to do is, if you're going to change your address, is notify the school through that parent that module of an address change, and they can update it at the school. So there's some built-in communication features that are supposed to be there. Once it's in place and we've got it all worked out, we will get that back out, and next fall we should be back up and allowing parents to access grades.
That sounds great. Now I know with the PowerSchool it is attached to something called Homebase.
Homebase is going to be what DPI, or Department of Public Instruction, is sort of calling that whole new accountability module for them. PowerSchool, the parent piece, grades will be part of that. We do some assessments, formative assessments. They'll be rolled into that Homebase. It's sort of going to become a one-stop spot for schools to access certain information from DPI.
That's really interesting, and I'm sure it'll be a great piece for parents to stay informed. Yep. I know that part of the Ready initiative also discussed career planning and more, I guess, career technical classes.
Well,
more focus in that direction.
There's been a change in terms of what they're doing with the career classes. It used to be under the old system, and part of this was budget driven, is you could access pretty much any course you wanted to through community college and those career readiness pieces. Now they've sort of narrowed it and require you to have a certain focus when you're going into those courses. So you're going to be able to access those community college courses, access those career ready courses, but they want you to be a little more focused in terms of picking a track as you head into that. And that's probably, as we head into the next year, a good discussion to bring in our CTE, Laverne Pickett, and talk a little bit more about what those changes will entail.
Okay, to allow students to become more focused, I guess, with career choices for those that may not be directly college bound. Mm-hmm. All right, that's great. As far as the Ready initiative, are there anything you would like to add as far as that with the Race to the Top funds? I know that Race to the Top funds will be ending for us soon.
Yeah, Race to the Top funds will end next year, and they were a lot of the funds that the state used to roll out some of these initiatives. So just like with any federal program, there's good and bad. There are a lot of rules and regulations and restrictions that come with these, but when we went to the budget crisis a few years ago, those Race to the Top funds were a part of helping us get through those. And so we seem to be back on track budget-wise, and we'll see where we go from there.
That's great. Well, we're going to take a break. And now, when we come back, we've got more questions for Dr. Markley. Plus, we'll also give the viewers the information you need to get your questions answered here on our show. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
week we return all our cans and bottles. Yeah, we hope to reduce the world's waste.
But aluminum? It's like gold.
There's a can.
Where?
Get it.
Environmental defense. Get green. For more tips, go to getgreen.com.
Last month, I adjusted my thermostat a few degrees a day to lower my energy bill. Experts say that helps reduce air pollution. I say, cha-ching. Morning, Carl. Morning.
Environmental defense. Get green. For more tips, go to getgreen.com.
Welcome back to Upfront with the Superintendent. This show is all about answering your questions, so let's get right back to our topics that we're discussing. Everyone knows that the pre-K situation has been in the news, so Dr. Markley is going to help us figure out what's happening in the legislature with regard to our pre-K programs.
Well, there's a new bill that's been introduced called HB 935, deals with pre-K changes. And one of the things that it's going to do is significantly reduce the income level that would qualify for pre-K services. Currently it's at 200% of poverty level. They're going to reduce that to 100% of the poverty level, which would take about a third of the families who are eligible for pre-K services and make them no longer eligible. Also, in the past, the school system has been the fiscal agent for the local for those dollars as they flow down. And this bill would not allow school systems to be the fiscal agent for those, and would require someone else to serve as the fiscal agent.
Now, what does that mean when you say that?
Well, you get the dollars for pre-K and X number of dollars. And so it comes to the local service, and then the school system administers those dollars, pays the bills, and acts sort of as the bookkeeper for those. And pre-K in North Carolina is really a unique partnership between the public schools, which have pre-K services, as well as private providers. And the state reimburses both the public schools and the private providers for providing those services, sort of based on a head count per slot basis. And in fact, schools get less per child than the private side does. We're a little larger, so there's some economy of scales and efficiencies there that we can put in place. Our concern is when you start limiting the number of students who can access pre-K, is that that'll have a long-term effect on helping some of our most neediest students be able to access quality public education and become ready for school. When you eliminate a third of those kids who are eligible, I wonder about the motivation sometimes. I sometimes think when you look at the Judge Manning rules, where he says pre-K access for identified at-risk kids, is this a way to get around that piece of legislation? We need to make sure that our kids coming into kindergarten are as ready as possible. And anything that restricts our neediest and at-risk students from that service really causes concern for me.
It looks like by not letting these children get the education as quickly as they can, it just delays the problems that will then come up once they get into elementary school.
It does, and see, this is the second year in a row where we're going to see significant changes to preschool education. Last year, they took preschool education, moved it from the education department into the Health and Human Services division. And it doesn't seem like a big deal as to which agency runs it, but when DPI runs it, then I think the focus is more on the educational aspect of it. The Health and Human Services side, the focus tends to be more on the child care aspect of it.
Is there any particular reason that you know of that they switched that?
I'm not sure why.
Just a political move?
It was done last year. There have also been some significant dollar impacts over the last several years in terms of as we're cutting budgets. This is one of the areas that's been cut.
I know when it was on the news, it appeared that we were not able to, or the state was not able to serve all the children that were originally needed to be served. Is that true? I mean, is there a waiting list?
Yes, there's a waiting list. So if you reduce the income eligibility, all of a sudden you eliminate the waiting list. You really haven't eliminated the waiting list. You simply just said you're not eligible.
Right. You've not eliminated the need.
You've
eliminated the waiting list, but not the need.
But not the need. That's a good way to put it.
So if they didn't pass the bill and left pre-K as it is, would funds be needed for more schools, or how could we remedy the problem for the children that need to be serviced?
Well, example for last year, when there was additional money in the budget, the governor transferred some to increase the number of pre-K slots to those who are eligible. They would probably have to look at, based on, like I said, there's some, Judge Manning has come down a couple of times about the importance of preschool education, so they may have to look at that. We think pre-K is critical to our at-risk students. There are some studies that show that there's been, when we can get these kids into pre-K, get them kindergarten ready, they're going to be more successful heading into the educational system.
Which seems to be true, because as they continue to increase the rigor in elementary school, the students need to come in even more ready than they ever have been.
Well, it's a different world, and school is a good education is even more critical now than it ever was. And in North Carolina, we do a good job compared to where we were 50, 60, 70 years ago. We're graduating more students. We've raised the standards along the way. I hate to see us do something that looks like a step back.
Absolutely. Well, moving from pre-K, the next big legislative piece that is in, I guess it's been passed, would be the Excellence in Public Schools Act.
It hasn't been passed. It's still being debated, and it's got a lot of different parts to it.
Okay.
And it incorporates some things that were started last year and going to carry over this year. So let's take a look at some of the different parts.
Okay. And I know a lot of the things with this act, we are actually seeing some through the Readiness Initiative already in place.
Right.
Okay.
One of the things it wants to do is give schools a grade, and basically give schools an A through F grade, based loosely on the Florida model. As it's currently written in SB 361, though, that grade would be strictly based on percentage of kids passing the test. There's no factor for growth. So if I'm a school that was low performing, and I've shown tremendous growth, I might have been, let's say, a school that was at 50% proficient, and I jumped 10 or 12 points to become 60, 62% proficient. I'd still be an F school under this system and get no credit for the fact that we've grown our kids 10% from where they were the previous year. And when you look at the data and you use the current data to assign grades, those grades almost mirror exactly socioeconomic status. Schools that have the lowest free and reduced lunch populations tend to grade as an A. Those who have the highest free and reduced lunch or high poverty schools grade an F. So are we grading the schools on their ability, or are we grading them on their economic status? And so if we're going to have a school grade, and I really believe we need something that gives the parents an indication of the quality of the school, then we need to have more than just simply a proficiency number attached to it. We need to look at the growth piece of that and be able to make sure that number has real meaning in terms of what's going on. I'm afraid simply assigning an A to F grade based on pure proficiency is not a full measure of what's happening in those schools.
Now, how does this differ with what is current, I guess, the ABCs that are currently given to schools at the end of every year?
Well, under the old system, you were an honor school of excellence. You met growth, didn't meet growth, and for a parent, that could be it could get a little confusing. So I understand the want to simplify the process and make it more transparent for parents. But if I'm gonna have an A, B, C, or D grade, then that grade really has to be a true measure of the whole school, and not just what happened on one day out of 180.
So the new system doesn't really allow for a lot of flexibility.
No.
It's kind of cut or dry what those children did on that given day.
Right. Now at the high school, you add in some college graduation numbers and then the ACT pieces, but there's no reflection on that growth component that says that this school, even though it's struggled, has really grown these kids more than in 1 year, and they just haven't reached that next level yet.
Absolutely. What's the next big piece after school grades?
Another piece that you're looking at here is the teacher tenure. The part of this bill would eliminate teacher tenure and go to a contract system for teachers. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, and I know that has some of our teachers concerned.
I know that, parents hear teacher tenure. What is the current policy as far as teacher tenure? How do they achieve tenure, and what does it guarantee to them?
Well, what you look at in terms of tenure is you have to go 4 years before you're awarded tenure. So that first 4 years is a probationary period, and then at the end of the fourth year, you are, if you meet the standards, you're awarded tenure. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed a job for life. We still have teachers who, even under the current system, if they're not performing, there are improvement plans. There are other ways and means to either they get better, or to encourage them to maybe find another profession. But New Hanover County is unique in terms of that our standards for tenure are higher than just about every other county. The current rating system is basically proficient is the baseline. Well, of the 6 standards, we require you to be above proficient in at least 2 of those standards. So we've got a higher standard for tenure than other counties around us.
So how does this match with the new the new requirements
Well,
of teachers?
if this bill passes and they change tenure, then it becomes simply you sign a contract, initial contract, maybe a 2-year contract, and at the end of the 2 years, we decide whether to offer you a new contract for 4 years.
And under this act, what are the criteria that you would look at to show if a teacher is an effective teacher?
They're still debating that. There's a similar bill on the Senate side, which on the House side rather, I think it's 588. So they're going to have to work out some of what those look like. And I really don't want to get into a whole lot of the details on this because there's just so many variations in terms of what's coming up with that particular bill.
Absolutely. What are some other components of this act that are important to our schools?
Well, it picks up on terms of the two big ones we talked about with the grading piece.
Right.
Another aspect of it was the tenure piece. It picks up and talks a little bit more about the third grade component that they started last year in terms of what that needs to look like. They want to have third graders must pass the reading test before getting promoted. Right. So there's some promotion issues that it sort of addressed in those as well. It talked a little bit about merit pay in terms of switching to encouraging districts to have some kind of performance pay. We do have some performance pilots here in terms of at some of our high need schools. If they meet certain standards, then there is some performance pieces that go with that. I'm concerned that the budget doesn't really talk about the funding aspect that goes with that. So this is a major piece of legislation. I would encourage folks to go look at the legislation at the legislator's website. You can find copies of all the bills and become informed. And no matter where you come down on this bill, talk to your legislators about how you feel about this particular piece of legislation.
That's true, because it's not often we can catch bills of this magnitude before they're passed and really act on them. So parents need to get involved and be heard if they're concerned about this, because this will make major changes in our schools.
It'll make huge changes. And this is the long session. So this is the time when you get the more substantial bills in terms of educational change. Next year they're going to a short session, and most of that is minor tweaks to the previous budget and things from the previous from this year. So there are some other huge bills out there, and being an active and involved person and knowing what's going on in our legislature is going to be critical if we're going to protect and have good public schools.
Well, thanks, Dr. Markley. We're going to go to another break. Now, thank you. Don't go away. We've got more viewer questions and more issues to cover. Plus, if you want to have the superintendent answer your questions about our school system, we've got the information for you right now. So get out a pen and paper and jot down these details.
If you would like to have your questions about issues relating to our school system answered by Dr. Markley, then visit our school system's website at www.nhcs.net and click on the Parent tab, and then click on the Superintendent on the left side of the screen. There you will find a submission form for your questions. You can also send your questions by mail to New Hanover County Schools, attention UpFront, 6410 Carolina Beach Road, Wilmington, North Carolina, 28412.
Welcome back for our final segment here on UpFront with the Superintendent of Schools. Dr. Tim Markley has been going over some legislation that has become really important to our schools, and we've got a few more pieces of legislation we want to cover before the end of the show. Dr. Markley, I know we were talking about vouchers. There's legislation out there about school vouchers.
House Bill 944, which is called the Opportunity Scholarship Act, would take public tax dollars and allow those to be transferred to parents to use at private schools or religious schools. I've got serious concerns about taking public tax dollars to fund private education. One of the hallmarks of our country has always been our public education system. And when we start to create this two-tier system, I think it has a negative impact on our educational system as a whole. The amount of the scholarship is $4,200. One of our local private schools is $15,000 a year or more. That $4,200 is not going to allow a low-income family to attend that private school. So when you look at in the pre-K bill where they're reducing the threshold to 100% of poverty, This bill has a 300% of poverty threshold to qualify for the tax credit. That's kind of a mixed message when we're looking at it. We're going to reduce the income level for preschool, but we're going to have this higher income level if you want to access this tax voucher.
This is another one of those bills that if parents are very concerned, they need to get right on contacting their legislators.
Yes.
All right, our next one is actually a bill that has passed, and it is on digital textbooks.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I mean, I've always been a proponent of technology in our schools. This is allowing us to use our textbook funds to purchase digital textbooks instead of paper copies. I think long term it has some potential implications for what we're doing in our classrooms, potential class savings. So I'm excited to see what this bill passed. I'm interested to see what then happens at the state level to roll this out.
Absolutely. Another bill is something that's been very important during this school year, and that's school safety.
Yeah, there's a new school safety bill working its way to the legislature. I'm a little disappointed it initially included dollars for SROs, but when it came out of committee, they stripped out those dollars for the SRO, and they've got some reporting requirements in this bill, but it's no longer the bill that I thought it was going to be, or one that would allow us to maybe offset some of the costs for additional security.
Okay. Are there any good points to that bill that?
Yeah, I mean the reporting pieces, the requirements to do drills, they're good. Some of the clearinghouse information piece, the governor's created his new safety clearinghouse or center to do those things. So the more information is always valuable. But if the issue was resources in the building level, that was taken out of the bill, and I'm a little disappointed in that.
Again, another bill that needs to be
Yep.
looked at and call some legislators on. And the last one, which is an interesting topic and seems to come and go with educators and parents alike, and that's cursive writing.
Cursive writing. There's a bill out there that would require teaching of cursive writing and would require the memorization of certain multiplication tables and other math facts. We teach cursive writing in New Hanover County. We've never stopped, but reality is that I can teach you cursive writing, but most of our kids, once they get past elementary school and move up in the other grades, aren't using it on a day-to-day level to the point where it reinforces with them. They're typing now instead of writing, and that's just a facet of modern life that's different.
Absolutely.
We will not stop teaching cursive writing, but I can't make you use it once you do it. I mean, I told somebody, I said, when was the last time you used the quadratic equation that you learned in math?
So some of those things are good to know, but are not as useful as they used to be. Well, thanks for all the information. And the one thing that parents need to take away from this show is they need to get involved and stay on top of these issues, because if you're concerned and you want your voice heard, you need to contact your legislators.
No matter which way you believe on these issues, it is always important to talk to your elected officials.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up this year's UpFront. Look for a new edition of our program starting back in September, and then each month of the traditional school year right here on the Learning Network of the Cape Fear, Time Warner Cable Channel 5 and Charter Cable Channel 12. To keep up with everything related to New Hanover County schools, you can check into the school system's website at www.nhcs.net. Also, throughout the summer right here on the Learning Network, don't miss our summer news breaks. On behalf of Dr. Markley and the staff here at NHCS TV, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next year for an all-new edition of UpFront with the Superintendent.